What if the internet broke? How would you feel? But I don't mean like you've done something stupid like unplugged your router and nothing is working. I mean like your router's working just fine, but you can't access the information you want to find, the websites you want to go to, and you can't navigate the web easily. The title of today's talk, or my talk, is What if the internet breaks? And I think a point to be made there is that the internet is one thing. And that's why we capitalize the I in internet, but that's something I'm going to come back to in a bit. So what I'm talking about is the emerging boundaries that are threatening our global and open internet that we have today, and how those boundaries will affect the ability for us to come together, to work together, and to solve problems together in the future. What do I mean by a global and open internet? I mean the internet that we've known for the past 20 years, for the past 2 decades, one where anybody can access any website from any computer anywhere in the world, and one where any tweets that you have tonight are instantly readable by people elsewhere. We really love the internet. In 1 second online, more happens than any one of us could keep track of in an entire lifetime. In 1 day online, the volume of information that's generated and that's potentially useful to us is staggering. But imagine that rather than feeling like the internet was growing with more and more information, you felt it shrinking around you. If you live in a country where you don't have Netflix, where Netflix isn't offered, and you use a VPN or proxy to access your Netflix account that you pay for legitimately, you might come home one day and find something like this, because you've been locked out of your account because Netflix has banned proxies. Or let's say that you are in Argentina and suddenly find that your WhatsApp is no longer working. And you realize it's because a court order in Brazil has been passed blocking WhatsApp in Brazil, but Argentina's WhatsApp servers are connected to Brazil's. Or say you live in Italy and you realize that the Google result, or you've done a Google search and half of the search results are missing because of a law passed in France. Or say you move abroad to study abroad in China and you find when you get there that your favorite news portals and your favorite social media sites aren't working, are blocked, and you're not able to talk to your friends at home. We imagine the internet to be a borderless place, but we forget that the world is full of borders. And as more and more of us come online, there are more and more efforts to control what we see and do online. And all of the examples I just gave have one thing in common, which is that what people do in one place to try and control the internet can have impacts on internet users elsewhere and everywhere. And so, what do those examples that I just gave you mean, and what do I really mean by a broken internet? I think that an internet breakage can take really 2 forms, generally, a hard form and a soft form. The hard form is really that you're completely unable to access, say, a specific website or an entire part of the internet. A soft form is a little bit less obvious. It's when you might not even know that something's being hidden from you when it is. The first form of an internet break that I want to talk about is alternate root systems. And that sounds very technical, but it's really important, and it's the least desirable form of a broken internet. And to understand what an alternate root system is, you have to understand first a little bit about how the internet actually works. And that's why I want to return to that point I made about capitalizing the I in internet. So the internet today is really one thing. It's not just a network of networks, it's the network of networks. And the reason for that is because the internet addressing system is unique, such that every address online doesn't overlap with another address. And you can think of that in terms of the physical world as well. If we had 2 buildings that had the same address, or 2 addresses that led to the same building, it would be hard for the postman to figure out where to go. The same is true online. If we have multiple addressing systems, if we type a website into our browser, we may be led somewhere where we didn't intend to go in the first place. And so to create an alternate root system is really to create an alternate internet. And it would destroy the internet as one global resource and turn it into a bunch of little I walled off internets. Less severe than alternate root systems is manual internet service provider configuration, or ISP configuration. So an internet service provider is essentially what provides you, the customer, with internet connectivity. And it's the first stop between your computer and the destination that you're trying to get to, say, google.com. What's possible to do is to manually enter addresses into an internet service provider, a domestic internet service provider, outside of the root, or the larger addressing system that I was just talking about. If that happens, then people who have that domestic internet provider are able to find that address, but people who live outside and don't use those domestic internet service providers are not. And that makes parts of the internet essentially invisible to the rest of the world. Related to entering addresses into ISPs so that I could see something that you can't is blocking addresses through ISPs so that I can't see something that you can. And so one of the issues I want to talk about is ISP based filtering. And an example of that is, say, adult content filters, which are actually very prevalent here in the UK. They tend to have larger than anticipated or larger than intended consequences, especially with adult filters that try and block pornography or illegal material. They often end up blocking very legitimate articles about sexual health or drug use. Moreover, with content censorship, the major issue is that what's censored in one place might not be censored in another. And so content censorship laws that apply to the internet tend not to be very effective. The last issue that I want to talk about here is takedown requests. So a takedown request is basically when a government asks an internet company directly to take down a piece of content. And this is something we see more and more with the rise of user-generated content, platforms like Instagram, Facebook, etc., where internet companies may or may not be liable for what users actually post on their websites. Because takedown requests are made directly to internet companies by governments in a non-standardized way, what a lot of companies end up doing is simply complying with whatever request they get so that they don't fall foul of the law. And that's at the expense of the user and at the expense of due process and transparency. I think a lot of the examples that I've just given kind of illustrate that with the internet, there's often not a right answer. Different types of organizations and stakeholders, for example, law enforcement, privacy advocates, or private companies, have legitimately different visions of what they want the internet to look like. And so I want to talk about two major areas where I think that a broken internet would have really important impacts. The first is the economic impact. In 2014, the Boston Consulting Group estimated that the internet makes up around 10% of the GDP of most developed countries. Today, a company can use the internet to access customers and markets that it wouldn't have been able to otherwise, and our globalized economies are very reliant on interconnected global data flows facilitated by the internet. The other major area of impact that I want to talk about is the civic area, and it's very near to me because for the past few years I've been working in OpenGov, or open governance. And OpenGov is many things to many people, but one of the important things that OpenGov is really about is harnessing the power of networks, and harnessing the power that comes with people who are connected in different places, with different backgrounds and different interests, who can come together, do tasks, and make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do alone. So I think there's, beyond the productivity and GDP argument, the internet also facilitates humans to solve problems that are nearest to us. Some examples of that. One is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, called SETI at Home. SETI at Home basically takes the idle computers, so when you're not using your computer, of 3 million people to turn it into a virtual supercomputer that analyzes radio signals from space, searching for extraterrestrial intelligence. Another example is the Zooniverse platform, which is a collaborative research platform where hundreds of thousands of volunteers come together to collect and analyze data, and together publish research reports on space, the environment, biology, etc. Another example is Kaggle, which is a data science platform that uses cash incentives to get data scientists to come together and find best fit models for specific data sets. What Kaggle, SETI at Home, and Zooniverse have in common is that none of these are large organizations. In fact, they are very small, but they use the internet ability to provide information and connectivity to bring people together to do things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do alone. When Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, which is not the internet, by the way, in 1991, he said that the point was for information to be freely available to anyone. Google's mission statement is that information should be made universally accessible and useful. I hope what I've said today makes it clear that the global and open internet isn't something we can take for granted, and that quick fixes that we try and make now could become permanent obstacles in the future. The internet's greatest strength comes in the fact that its value comes from us, its users. And so I think that this talk isn't necessarily mine to give, because what happens to the internet happens to all of us. Thank you.